Hey, it's Barça here, and today's video I'm going to be talking about former La Masia talent Xavi Simons. Back when he was at Barcelona, he was the biggest talent in the world, but eventually he left the Blaugrana for PSG, where he never really made it, and today he's at Dutch club PSV. As a 19-year-old, he's definitely still got a future, but he'll probably never fulfill his dream of becoming one of Barcelona's star players. Make sure to stay tuned as you look how he went from a Barcelona prospect to a PSG reject and see whether he can still ever really make it. At the age of 7 already, Barcelona discovered Xavi Simons and signed him for La Masia. The coming years he would establish himself as one of the best talents in La Masia and one of the best talents in the world in general, really. His passing was great, his dribbling was incredible, and he was able to captain the team and lead his team forwards. And he really stood for Barcelona's values. He was humble, he helped his teammates improve, and he cared about the club. So it's no surprise that he was seen as a real deal and that he gained comparisons to the likes of Xavi and Iniesta. In 2019, when he started to get closer to the first team dynamics, his contract expired, so Barcelona wanted to renew his contract. Xavi Simons definitely wouldn't have found it a problem to stay at Barça, but he and especially his agent Mino Raiola wanted to have some extra bonuses in his new contract. Barcelona didn't agree with this, as Xavi Simons was still a youth player and they didn't want to give him a better contract than his teammates, which is fair I think, and it's something that matches Barcelona's philosophy of humility and teamwork. So now the choice was up to Xavi Simons, since neither Raiola or Barcelona were going to change their minds. He could either stay at Barcelona on a more humble contract, but he would be at the club of his dreams, or he could go somewhere else and probably earn more and enjoy more contract bonuses and fame. To the disappointment of many Barca fans, he chose the latter. A lot of clubs were interested in signing him, and eventually it was PSG who did so. There he was going to earn 1 million euros a year. I think you shouldn't only blame Xavi Simons for choosing money and fame above Barca though. With an agent like Raiola, it's not easy to make these type of decisions, and if he rather wants to have money and fame than to play for Barca, then that's just his decision. It's just a shame if you know that he used to be more of a humble player who put Barca above everything. Raiola, the fame, the money, and the media just changed him. So he was at PSG now, and after a little more than a year he made his professional debut on 10th of February 2021. That season he would only make 2 appearances in total though. Next season, so the 2021-2022 season, he did get a little more game time and made a total of 9 appearances. But again, that's not too much, and it was a substitute most of the times. So he failed to really make a big impact and struggled to get minutes in the first team. Just think about what would have happened if he had chosen to stay at Barça. He would have a little less money in his pocket, but by now players like Gavi and Peri were regular starting 11 players for the Blaugrana. So if you think about what kind of potential people said Xavi Simons had in La Masia, you really wonder how good he could have been if he had stayed at Barcelona, and you would think that he could be on the same level as someone like Gavi. You can never know if he'd actually have made it in the first team, but it might have happened, and he will be way more of a talent than he now was in reality at PSG. Now he struggled to get minutes in the first team, and in the summer of 2022 his contract expired, and PSG still wanted to keep him, so they started negotiations over new contracts. Initially, everything seemed to point towards Xavi Simons staying in Paris, but the young prospect still had doubts over his future. Staying at PSG meant that he was going to keep struggling to get game time, surely at a club that always signs a lot of new players. So for his development, it wasn't the right choice maybe. His progress could stagnate, and before you know it, he could have become a player that everyone had just forgotten about. So Xavi Simons made his decision. He wasn't going to stay at PSG. And since Dutch club PSV Eindhoven were interested in signing him, he had a good option to get more minutes elsewhere. PSV was definitely not a bad choice. He would get more game time, and PSV is still a very decent team. And since joining PSV, the world has been quite silent about him, but he's actually been really great thus far. In his first 12 games he scored 7 goals and given 4 assists, which is quite incredible for an offensive midfielder. He's even played as a false 9 too, so he shows to be a very versatile player. He still scored most of his goals as a midfielder though. So while it was starting to look like he was going to be one of those players that was going to become a what could have been, he's actually a 19-year-old who's absolutely killing it at PSV, and he's one of their best players. So if you look at it, he's still got great potential, and it probably won't last long before he makes a move to a bigger club again. And he might easily still unlock his true potential and become the player that many expected him to become as a kid. Leaving PSG eventually turned out to be a very good decision. So Xavi Simons is definitely not wasted or finished yet, but for a very long period of his life he's had one big dream, one big goal to fulfill in football next to just making it to professional football already, making it at Barcelona's first team. When he left Barcelona it was probably a hard decision because of this, but you never know, he could always return to Blaugrana later in the future. So here we are now, he's 19 years old and he's doing great at PSV, but will he ever return to Barcelona? Well, I think he might definitely become good enough to do so. Think about Frenkie de Jong. He was 22 years old during that incredible 2018-2019 season with Ajax. So that's 3 years older than Xavi Simons is right now. And PSV is kind of on the same level as Ajax. So he definitely still can become good enough, and he will probably still want to return to Barcelona someday. If you spent 8 years of your youth there, then you don't just forget about that. He still has some Blaugrana in him. The problem is that Barcelona might not want him back anymore. If you look at Barcelona's midfield, it looks like Pedri and Xavi are going to occupy the midfield for the next 10 to 15 years. And apart from that, there will probably still be players who come up through La Masia and will become good enough to get a proper amount of game time. So if Xavi Simons joins Barcelona again, it would either mean that he'd be a substitute player, but he might become too good to be one, or Xavi or Pedri would have left, or that he would have become a false 9 and placed together with Pedri and Xavi in a triangle like Xavi, Messi and Iniesta used to do. So there is a chance that he returns to Barca one day, but he'll need to become good enough to do so, and with Pedri and Xavi, it's looking like Barcelona won't need a midfielder for a while, so it's quite unlikely. That was it for today's video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and feel free to share your own opinion on Xavi Simons in the comments down below. Força Barça and have a good day.